When the distress call arrived, flickering across light years in the cold, indifferent void, most of the galaxy assumed diplomats would be polite representatives of the United Nations of star systems, experts in negotiation and protocol. But Earth did not send diplomats. Earth sent warriors, and when they arrived, ships cutting through the nebula like predatory comets, every seasoned officer, every alien observer, and every terrified civilian on the beleaguered world knew immediately that legends had been understated. The fleet's lead vessel, the Valar's Edge, descended into orbit with a presence that made stars themselves seem to dim in deference. Humans moved with precision, instinct, and a lethal grace born from centuries of surviving where others would perish. Commander Rourke, standing at the helm, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the sensors as if the galaxy's threats were trivial annoyances, gave a single command that rippled through the crew: prepare to make history. Around him, the bridge was a symphony of quiet efficiency. Officers checked weapons, recalibrated shields, monitored incoming data, all moving with a fluidity that no alien military could predict. Beside him, Lieutenant Lyra, her pulse rifle humming softly as she adjusted the targeting arrays, exuded the same calm certainty that humans carried into every engagement, a knowledge that no enemy, no matter how technologically advanced, could outthink or outlast them. The distress call had come from the planet Kylara, a world on the brink of annihilation, its surface already scarred by orbital bombardment and planetary sieges. And yet, as humans descended through its turbulent atmosphere, slicing through storms and magnetic turbulence with uncanny ease, the alien authorities monitoring the arrival could only whisper in awe and fear. These were not diplomats. These were predators, apex hunters, and the galaxy had been foolish to assume negotiations would be enough. The planet itself was a testament to desperation. Smoke twisted across the horizon, clouds of dust and ash mingling with the greenish glow of damaged biospheres. Cities, once magnificent, lay in ruin, their spires toppled, streets scorched, and populations scattered into the skeletal remains of their own civilization. And yet, as the humans deployed from orbit, they did not flinch. Dropships cut through the atmosphere, plumes of plasma shielding them against debris, and as the first boots touched Kylara's broken soil, every alien observer saw what humans were capable of in the most extreme conditions. Soldiers in exosuits, carrying weapons capable of annihilating fortified positions in seconds, moved with a precision that bordered on instinctual artistry. Rourke led the first platoon, scanning every ruin for threats, assessing terrain, and anticipating every enemy movement before it happened. Lyra moved with him, covering flanks, analyzing heat signatures, and neutralizing hostile units before they could strike. Even the Kelleran survivors, hiding in ruined districts, felt a strange mix of awe and relief, realizing that the species whispered about in galactic legends the species feared, revered, and sometimes despised was here. And they answered the call not with caution or diplomacy, but with the certainty of unstoppable force. As the humans moved deeper into the city, scanning for the source of the distress, the first enemy contingents revealed themselves. Kylara's supposed elite defenders, genetically enhanced soldiers who had been raised and trained to perfection by their warlords, and they froze, weapons trembling as they confronted humans in the field for the first time. And the truth became immediately evident. The legends of humanity had not been exaggerated. Rourke strode forward, a figure of calm, lethal precision, analyzing the enemy formations with an instinct no algorithm could predict. He gave a single signal, and the humans advanced as one, a unit in perfect synchrony. Lyra's pulse rifle spat arcs of energy that disabled shields and disrupted formations. Rourke's blades cut with surgical precision, dismantling drones and soldiers alike. And Jox, the team's tactical genius, manipulated environmental systems to create controlled collapses, forcing enemies into predictable kill zones. The Kelleran defenders, trained to think faster than most species could process, could not anticipate the improvisation, instinctual adaptation, and raw determination of humans, and within minutes their morale shattered. The survivors who had doubted the arrival of Earth's forces now whispered their astonishment. Humans did not negotiate, they did not hesitate, and they did not fail. They simply answered, and where they answered, the impossible became achievable. The true test, however, awaited beyond the urban battlefield. Deep within Kylara's central continent, a conglomeration of orbital weapons platforms, automated defenses, and energy conduits formed an impregnable citadel controlled by the warlords responsible for the planet's devastation. Most species would have called for reinforcements, perhaps even attempted diplomacy from orbit, weighing probabilities and casualties in endless simulations. But humans, like any other species in the galaxy, operated on principle, instinct, and the certainty that survival was non-negotiable. Rourke scanned the citadel, mapping entry points, vulnerabilities, and enemy rotations, while Lyra adjusted her weapon systems for maximum efficiency in low-gravity, high-turbulence conditions. Jox interfaced with Kylara's remaining infrastructure, hacking into surveillance arrays and energy conduits to manipulate the battlefield before the humans even arrived. Every calculation was executed, every contingency anticipated, yet the approach retained the fluidity of instinct rather than cold algorithm. The Kelleran warlords, observing through remote systems, realized far too late that they were facing not soldiers, not diplomats, but predators whose adaptability, intelligence, and lethal efficiency had been honed over millennia. Humans were not merely capable of survival, they defined it, and the galaxy had yet to see the full extent of what survival meant in human hands. The descent into the citadel was brutal. Orbital drops disrupted enemy formations, but humans had trained for environments that others deemed uninhabitable. Toxic atmospheres, magnetic storms, gravitational anomalies, and hostile terrain. Rourke's team moved as if the citadel were a natural extension of their own minds, anticipating traps, disabling energy barriers, and dismantling drones before they could respond. Lyra's plasma shots carved safe passages through corridors that had been sealed for centuries, and Jox's interface with the citadel's infrastructure created cascading failures that forced the enemy to react rather than attack, a tactic that humans executed instinctively. The Kelleran warlords, confident in their impenetrable fortress, could only watch in mounting terror as humans infiltrated, disrupted, and dismantled their defenses with a speed and precision that defied imagination. Within the citadel, survivors hidden in shadows witnessed humans moving with the lethal elegance of apex predators, calculated, efficient, adaptive, and utterly relentless. Each corridor cleared, each turret disabled, each squad neutralized, reinforced the truth that humans were not merely a threat, they were a force of nature, unstoppable wherever life demanded intervention. At the heart of the citadel, the warlords had gathered, confident that their technological superiority would intimidate the invaders. But humans were unimpressed by superior numbers or advanced weapons. They relied on unpredictability, instinct, and a mastery of battlefield adaptation that no simulation could anticipate. Rourke moved into the chamber first, analyzing defensive patterns, calculating lethal efficiency, and moving with the certainty of one who has faced annihilation and emerged victorious. Lyra covered his flanks, suppressing automated systems with precision, while Jox manipulated conduits to disable shields and communications, rendering the warlord's advantage meaningless. And as the humans advanced, the legends whispered across the galaxy came alive. Aliens who had feared humanity as monsters, apex hunters, unstoppable and relentless, now witnessed the truth. Humans did not merely survive, they dominated where survival itself was threatened, bending circumstances to their will and answering calls for help no other species would dare attempt. The battle in the citadel was swift but decisive. The warlords, despite enhancements, training, and superior weaponry, were no match for humans who combined instinct, intelligence, and adaptability. Rourke moved through defenses with lethal precision, disabling leaders, dismantling automated turrets, and neutralizing threats before they could react. Lyra's suppressive fire carved corridors of control, while Jox manipulated environmental systems to turn the citadel itself into a weapon against its inhabitants. Every action, every improvisation, every instinctual adaptation reinforced why humans were feared and revered. We were apex survivors, operating beyond the constraints of prediction or conventional warfare, and as the dust settled, the remaining defenders fled or surrendered, realizing too late that the galaxy's legends were not exaggeration but documentation of human truth. Where humans answered, the impossible became reality. When the dust cleared, the Princess of Kylara, finally emerging from her hiding place, could only stare in awe. I expected diplomats," she whispered, voice trembling, "and yet, you humans, you came as warriors." I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We answered the call. We endure. We fight when others flee. That is what makes us human." Her eyes reflected comprehension, fear, and the dawning understanding that legends had underestimated humanity's persistence, adaptability, and lethal efficiency. And somewhere, in the silent stars surrounding Clara, the galaxy would whisper once more, adding a new chapter to the record. Humans were not negotiators. Humans were survivors, apex predators, and unstoppable warriors, the species that answered where others hesitated, and the species whose presence ensured that life, however fragile, endured against impossible odds. The moment the citadel fell, it became clear that Kyalara's distress call had been merely the opening note of a far larger symphony of chaos. Orbital sensors lit up with dozens of approaching fleets, not all of them hostile, but many far more sophisticated and dangerous than the remnants of the warlord's forces. Yet humans did not hesitate. Rourke immediately coordinated the crew, directing reconnaissance drones to intercept incoming signatures while simultaneously preparing defensive arrays and tactical deployment teams for rapid insertion onto key locations across the planet. Lyra checked pulse rifles, recalibrating them for long-range engagements and variable atmospheric interference, while Jox interfaced with planetary networks, not only hacking enemy sensors but integrating civilian infrastructure to create improvised fortifications and environmental traps. The princess, still shaken, was guided to a safer command point, and as she watched the humans orchestrate this multi-layered defensive plan with instinctual efficiency, the awe in her luminescent eyes deepened. Humans were not merely soldiers. We were apex survivors, capable of assessing, adapting, and dominating situations that would overwhelm any other species. And this time, the scale was planetary. Kylara's skies erupted as hostile fleets emerged from the nebula, faster, deadlier, and better coordinated than any simulation the humans aboard the Valor's Edge could have anticipated. Yet humans thrived in chaos. Dropships cut through atmospheric storms with uncanny precision, deploying soldiers to critical positions that alien commanders had assumed would remain uncontested for hours. Rourke led the first strike team personally, moving with lethal fluidity across scorched terrain, scanning enemy positions and neutralizing threats before they could respond. Lyra's pulse rifle carved arcs of safety through the battlefield, suppressing superior numbers and disabling energy shields, while Jox manipulated power grids and communications networks to sow confusion among attackers and turn automated defenses against their operators. Even amidst the chaos, the humans moved with perfect coordination, improvising in real time, adapting to unpredictable threats, and reshaping the battlefield with an instinctive understanding of tactics and terrain that no other species could match. The princess, hidden behind a reinforced barricade, could only watch, awestruck, as humans dismantled one assault after another, each move a demonstration of why legends across the galaxy had whispered about Earth's warriors for centuries. As waves of attackers pressed forward, attempting to exploit weak points in Kylara's defenses, humans anticipated and countered with surgical precision. Rourke's team deployed improvised obstacles, creating kill zones where superior numbers became liabilities for the enemy. Lyra's long-range suppression neutralized artillery emplacements before they could fire. Each bolt of plasma, a precise calculation of energy output, distance, and trajectory. Jox's cybernetic interface extended across the planet's infrastructure, rerouting power, disabling automated drones, and forcing enemy formations into predictable paths, turning the battlefield itself into a weapon. The attackers, despite technological advantages and rigorous training, found themselves overwhelmed not by brute force alone, but by the humans' unique combination of adaptability, intelligence, and instinct. Survival was not optional. Humans turned it into art, a lethal symphony of anticipation and reaction, improvisation and execution. And every alien who witnessed it realized that humanity was unlike anything they had faced. The princess, gradually gaining courage, began to understand why the galaxy feared humans. While other species relied on rigid hierarchies, predictable algorithms, or sheer numbers, humans operated in the interstices of chaos, bending probability itself. Rourke, noticing her watching, gestured for her to follow and explained quietly as they moved between defensive positions. We survive where others fail. We adapt where others hesitate. Every encounter is a calculation, but not one based solely on logic. Instinct, experience, and improvisation shape the outcome. That is why we are feared. That is why we answer when no one else will." Her wings fluttered nervously, but the patterns on her skin glowed with comprehension. She had witnessed humans annihilate the impossible, and now she understood that survival for our species was more than endurance. It was an active, creative force capable of turning desperation into victory. The conflict escalated as a massive assault fleet emerged from the nebula. Capital ships bristling with energy weapons, fighter swarms, and boarding pods designed to crush any planetary resistance. Most species would have called for retreat or negotiations. Humans called for action. Rourke coordinated orbital strikes with planetary teams, synchronizing attacks across multiple vectors to neutralize enemy assets, while minimizing collateral damage to surviving civilians. Dropships inserted specialized squads into strategic positions, striking energy nodes, weapons arrays, and command centers, all while Lyra's team suppressed enemy advances with pinpoint plasma fire. Jox's cybernetic network manipulation turned the enemy's automated defenses against them, creating cascading failures in their fleet before they even realized it. And the first observed the princess, noting the awe and apprehension reflected in her eyes, realizing she was finally beginning to grasp the extent of humanity's lethal ingenuity. We were not invincible, but our survival instinct transformed every challenge into an advantage, and the galaxy had underestimated that instinct at its peril. Hours of relentless engagement followed. The skies above Kylara became a storm of plasma fire, debris, and smoke, yet humans moved with perfect coordination. Rourke led strikes that dismantled enemy formations before they could coalesce. Lyra created corridors of safety through lethal suppression, neutralizing superior numbers with methodical efficiency. Jox hacked into planetary infrastructure and enemy networks simultaneously, forcing opponents to react to humans rather than executing their own strategy. The princess witnessed soldiers leap across collapsing bridges, spin through anti-airfields, and improvise solutions to previously insurmountable obstacles. And she began to understand that humans were apex survivors, not because of technology alone, but because instinct, adaptability, and relentless determination had been honed over millennia. In each movement, humans revealed a combination of creativity, calculation, and lethal improvisation that no alien system, no matter how sophisticated, could anticipate or counter. At one critical juncture, the enemy attempted a concentrated orbital bombardment designed to flatten surviving population centers, and humans responded instantly. Rourke coordinated a multi-pronged counter, deploying interceptors, defensive drones, and orbital strike packages to neutralize the incoming fire before it could impact the surface. Lyra provided suppression fire against advanced targeting units, disabling guidance systems and creating blind spots in the assault. Jox rerouted citywide power grids to overload enemy sensors, and the humans on the ground improvised barricades, traps, and ambushes to protect civilians while keeping enemy forces off balance. The attackers, despite technological superiority and overwhelming numbers, found themselves continually outmaneuvered, their plans anticipating logic and order, not the chaos-bending adaptability of humans. And as the princess observed, her luminescent patterns flickering in disbelief, she realized that the legends of human lethality were not hyperbole. We were apex survivors, capable of turning any engagement, any battlefield, into a display of improvisational mastery and lethal efficiency. The tide of the battle shifted irreversibly when Rourke's team discovered the location of the enemy's command nexus within Kylara's upper continent. While conventional strategy might have dictated a slow siege, humans did not wait. Specialized squads, dropping from orbital insertion pods, moved with uncanny precision, neutralizing outer defenses, collapsing corridors, and turning environmental hazards into tactical weapons. Lyra's team suppressed energy shields and automated turrets, while Jox simultaneously hacked into communication arrays to manipulate enemy coordination, ensuring each assault was amplified by confusion and fear. Rourke led the charge personally, slicing through elite guards and clearing pathways with lethal efficiency. And as he did, the princess realized fully that humans were more than warriors. They were survival incarnate. The combined force of instinct, intelligence, improvisation, and determination made humans a force no other species could confront without terror. By the time the final engagement commenced at the enemy command nexus, the attackers were disoriented, demoralized, and fundamentally outmatched. Humans moved with fluid coordination, anticipating every move, improvising when calculations failed, and exploiting weaknesses no alien strategist could foresee. Rourke disabled key power nodes while Lyra created lethal choke points, and Jox turned automated defenses against their former operators, forcing enemy units into traps that were as inevitable as they were inescapable. Civilians, watching from safe zones, could only marvel at the humans' coordination and precision, while the princess, finally comprehending the scale of what she had witnessed, whispered to me in awe, "I thought diplomats would arrive. I did not think humans would." "This," I nodded, voice steady. "Humans answer, we endure. We fight where others flee. That is why the galaxy fears us. That is why we are the ultimate survivors. That is why you are alive today." She stared in silence, luminescent patterns flickering with the weight of understanding, realizing that what she had once feared as monstrous was in fact the lethal, adaptive, and unstoppable force of humanity. By the end of the day, Kylera was secured. The enemy fleets had retreated, their command networks crippled, and their soldiers either surrendered or scattered into hiding. The princess, exhausted but alive, finally allowed herself to exhale, wings folding in cautious relief. Around her, humans continued to coordinate evacuations, secure infrastructure, and stabilize the planet's defense, demonstrating that lethality and protection were inseparable for our species. The galaxy would remember this day, not for diplomacy, not for negotiation, but for the arrival of humans, the species that answered the call when survival itself was at stake. The apex predators, the unstoppable force, and the ultimate warriors whose presence ensured life endured where others would perish. Even as Kazara's surface began to stabilize under human oversight, the sensors aboard the Valor's Edge detected an entirely new threat emerging from beyond the Systema fleet, unlike any the galaxy had catalogued. Vast, coordinated, and heavily armed, with ships that seemed to move with a consciousness of their own, anticipating patterns of defense and response before they were even executed. Most species would have considered retreat or requested negotiations, but humans acted instinctively, seamlessly, and lethally. Rourke immediately deployed rapid response teams to higher-risk sectors, coordinating orbital defenses with ground forces while simultaneously directing Jox to probe enemy networks for exploitable weaknesses. Lyra recalibrated her pulse rifles for extended range engagements in low-orbit environments, calculating angles, energy dispersion, and atmospheric interference in real. While every member of the human contingent moved as a single, adaptive organism, the princess, still recovering from the previous battles, watched from the command observation deck, her luminescent patterns reflecting both awe and fear. She had witnessed humans dismantle one threat after another, yet this new fleet dwarfed anything she had previously seen. And even now, humans faced it with calm certainty rather than hesitation. It was instinct and survival distilled into action, and she was beginning to understand why the galaxy whispered about humans as both saviors and predators. The enemy fleet moved with lethal precision, launching scouting drones to probe planetary defenses and scanning for weaknesses in the human deployment. Yet humans anticipated every approach. Rourke coordinated defensive fire, using orbital railguns and shielded platforms to intercept drones before they could relay information. Lyra's teams provided cover fire and targeted suppression, creating corridors of lethal control across both ground and orbital space. Jox, interfacing with enemy communications and power conduits, created cascading interference patterns that disrupted targeting arrays and forced enemy ships into misalignment, turning their own technology against them. Humans did not simply respond, they dictated the battlefield, shaping the engagement with both instinctive improvisation and calculated precision, exploiting gaps and weaknesses in ways no other species could even conceive. The princess, peering through reinforced observation glass, saw not just combat, but a demonstration of apex survival. Humans did not merely survive, they dominated by turning every challenge into opportunity, every threat into advantage, and every impossibility into triumph. As the first wave of enemy fighters entered Kylera's atmosphere, humans acted with coordinated improvisation that bordered on clairvoyance. Dropships deployed from orbit, maneuvering through debris and storms with uncanny accuracy, and ground squads, moving like shadows across ruined cities and scarred landscapes, neutralized interceptors and boarding teams before they could engage civilian areas. Rourke led his squad with fluid lethality, combining close-quarters precision with long-range tactical awareness, each movement a balance of instinct and calculation. Lyra's pulse rifles carved arcs of safety through dense enemy formations, targeting key systems and neutralizing threats before they could react, while Jox turned orbital and ground defenses into integrated systems that anticipated enemy strategy and countered it automatically. The attackers, despite technological advantage and superior numbers, were forced to react to humans rather than executing their own plans, and panic began to ripple through their formations. The princess, wings trembling, realized that humans were not only feared, but feared for a reason. Our adaptability, lethality, and instinctive understanding of survival made us a force beyond conventional comprehension. The engagement escalated as capital-class enemy vessels descended into low orbit, their weapons capable of erasing entire cities in seconds. Most species would have scrambled for reinforcements or attempted to negotiate terms. Humans responded with preemptive strategy. Rourke coordinated orbital bombardments on critical enemy nodes while simultaneously directing ground strikes to neutralize access points. Lyra's teams established overlapping fields of fire, suppressing automated defenses and elite boarding units, while Jox exploited energy conduits to overload weapon systems and disable targeting arrays. Humans moved with perfect synchrony, improvising in real time, exploiting environmental variables, and converting every obstacle into advantage. The enemy command, observing from the flagship, found itself consistently outmaneuvered, unable to predict human tactics, and increasingly desperate as we adapted faster than they could react. The princess' luminescent patterns flickered with understanding. Humans were apex survivors, apex predators, and their lethal efficiency was not only in combat but in their ability to turn adversity into opportunity, to endure where others would fail, and to answer calls for help that no other species would dare approach. The battle reached a critical juncture when the enemy flagship attempted a direct strike on Kailara's planetary core, a move intended to destabilize the planet and force human retreat. Rourke, assessing the approach, executed a multi-layered counterattack with a precision born of experience and instinct. Orbital platforms fired synchronized volleys, intercepting missile arrays and neutralizing energy beams. Dropships inserted specialized squads into higher-risk zones, dismantling critical enemy systems from within, while Lyra and her teams suppressed retaliatory forces with calculated plasma bursts. Jox hacked the flagship's power conduits, creating cascading failures that disrupted shields and targeting algorithms. Even amidst the chaos, humans moved with lethal coordination, improvising tactics to counter unforeseen developments, turning the enemy's offensive into self-inflicted disaster. The princess, hidden behind reinforced panels, watched in awe as humans neutralized an assault that would have obliterated most planets. Understanding fully why our species had become both myth and nightmare across the stars. Hours stretched into continuous combat, yet humans neither wavered nor faltered. Each maneuver reinforced why the galaxy whispered our name in fear and respect. Adaptability, ingenuity, and relentless persistence were etched into our DNA. Rourke moved fluidly between offensive and defensive positions, striking with lethal precision while shielding civilians and infrastructure. Lyra's suppression fire created lethal corridors while protecting human and alien allies alike. Jox turned environmental variables into tactical advantages, manipulating terrain, power grids, and automated systems to force enemies into traps that exploited both psychology and physics. Even in exhaustion, humans demonstrated an instinctive superiority that no technology or training of other species could match. The princess finally understood that humans were not merely warriors, they were survival incarnate. Apex predators whose lethal efficiency was paired with unwavering commitment to protect life, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the enemy flagship faltered under sustained human counterattacks, boarding pods were neutralized before they could breach planetary defenses, and entire squadrons of fighters were forced to retreat. The tide of battle had shifted irreversibly. Humans, leveraging instinct, adaptability, and improvisation, had converted an imminent planetary disaster into a controlled engagement where survival was guaranteed and victory inevitable. The princess, still trembling, whispered in awe, "I expected diplomats. I thought humans would negotiate. I did not think you could do this." I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We answer. We endure. We fight when others flee. That is why the galaxy fears humans. That is why we survive where no one else can. Her wings fluttered nervously as comprehension dawned, and she finally realized the terrifying truth. Humans did not merely exist. Humans dominated by transforming impossible challenges into achievable victories, and our survival instinct was unmatched across the stars. The final engagement with the flagship was swift and decisive. Humans, using a combination of orbital precision strikes, ground infiltration, and cybernetic disruption, systematically dismantled the enemy vessel. Rourke led the boarding team, neutralizing leadership nodes and critical systems with lethal efficiency, while Lyra and her team suppressed enemy resistance, preventing counterattacks. Jox exploited every possible conduit, turning automated defenses into instruments of destruction against the enemy itself. The attackers, overwhelmed, demoralized, and trapped, had no choice but to retreat or surrender. Civilians, watching from secure zones, understood for the first time that humans were not negotiators or diplomats. They were apex survivors, warriors whose presence ensured survival against any odds. The princess, her luminescent patterns glowing with awe and fear, finally spoke. I will never forget this. Humans, you are unstoppable. I nodded, voice calm and firm. We endure, we answer. That is who we are. That is why the galaxy whispers our name. By the end of the engagement, Kalara was secure. Enemy forces had retreated, infrastructure stabilized, and civilians evacuated safely. Humans continued to coordinate planetary recovery, combining tactical acumen, improvisational problem-solving, and unyielding determination to ensure that survival was absolute. The princess, finally allowing herself to rest, understood fully that humans were more than legends. They were apex survivors, capable of transforming chaos into control, destruction into order, and fear into awe. Across the stars, civilizations would whisper of the day humans arrived on Kylara, not as negotiators, not as diplomats, but as apex predators, unstoppable warriors, and the ultimate guardians of life against impossible odds. And somewhere in the quiet void beyond the planet, the galaxy recalculated, realizing that humans answered where others hesitated, endured where others failed, and fought when survival itself was threatened, a constant, lethal, and unstoppable force in the cosmos. Even as Kalara stabilized under human guidance, sensors aboard the Valar's Edge detected signals from deep space anomalies fleets, from unknown sectors, civilizations that had long observed humanity with a mix of dread and fascination, and now had decided to test the truth of the legends. Most species, upon sensing the approach of these forces, would have fortified positions, sent envoys, or attempted to flee. Humans did none of that. Instinct, experience, and the relentless drive to survive dictated immediate action. Rourke assessed the readings with the calm of one who had seen the impossible and survived, issuing orders that rippled across the crew with precision. Orbital defense deployments, rapid response squads to critical locations, and Jox hacking into incoming signals to predict movement patterns and vulnerabilities. Lyra adjusted her weapon systems for engagement across multiple environment space, atmosphere, and planetary terrain, and the rest of the human contingent prepared without hesitation. The princess, observing from the command deck, her wings folded tightly against her back, felt the same mixture of awe and fear she had experienced during the first assaults. She had seen humans dismantle insurmountable odds before, and yet the scale of this new threat was beyond imagining. Humans did not hesitate, did not falter, and did not fear, and that understanding struck her with a terrifying clarity. These were apex survivors in their purest form, a species for whom the impossible was merely a challenge waiting to be overcome. The new fleet, vast and technologically superior, moved with efficiency and coordination, sending advanced probes and drone swarms to assess defenses and target weak points. Yet humans responded instantly, preemptively adapting to every observed tactic. Rourke coordinated orbital defenses to intercept probes and neutralize drone swarms before they could transmit data, while Lyra's teams provided overlapping fields of lethal suppression, cutting down attackers while protecting civilians and infrastructure. Jox interfaced with the fleet's probing signals, creating disruptions, redirecting drones into collisions, and manipulating energy readings to mislead the enemy about human positions and strength. Humans did not merely react, they dictated the battlefield, shaping the engagement on multiple layers simultaneously. blending instinct with intelligence, improvisation with lethal precision. Every alien watching, every commander observing from afar, understood the same truth the princess was beginning to comprehend. Humans were unpredictable, relentless, and utterly adaptive, a species whose lethal efficiency could not be anticipated, calculated, or countered by conventional means. As the alien fleet initiated a series of orbit bombardments intended to cripple planetary defenses, humans moved like shadows through chaos, turning death into opportunity. Dropships sliced through atmospheric turbulence, deploying soldiers to critical positions that no other species could reach, and ground squads neutralized artillery arrays and high-value targets before they could fire. Rourke led the charge personally, moving with fluid lethal precision, disabling command nodes and turning corridors of enemy resistance into controlled kill zones. Lyra's pulse rifles carved lethal arcs of control through the battlefield, each shot calculated yet instinctual, suppressing overwhelming numbers with surgical efficiency. Jox's cybernetic interface manipulated energy grids, communications, and automated defenses, transforming the enemy's technological superiority into their undoing. The attackers, despite training numbers and advanced weaponry, were consistently forced to react to humans rather than implementing their own strategies, and morale crumbled as every attack turned against them. The princess, wings trembling and eyes wide with comprehension, began to understand fully why humans were whispered about across star systems. Our lethal adaptability was not only survival, it was dominance, creativity, and instinct fused into a single unstoppable force. The battle escalated further as capital-class ships attempted orbital strikes designed to devastate Kyalara's surface. Most species would have hesitated, seeking retreat or negotiation, but humans acted decisively. Rourke orchestrated a multi-pronged counterattack, integrating orbital platforms, ground strikes, and rapid response squads to neutralize incoming fire. Lyra's teams suppressed enemy batteries and guided evacuations, ensuring civilian safety while maintaining offensive pressure. Jox hacked into targeting arrays and automated systems, creating cascading failures and turning enemy technology against them. Even as chaos reigned across space and the planet's surface, humans moved with lethal harmony, improvising, adapting, and converting each attack into an opportunity for dominance. Every move reinforced the terrifying efficiency of humans. We were apex survivors, predators whose ability to endure and improvise turned the impossible into victory, and whose presence ensured life survived where others would falter. The enemy attempted a coordinated boarding assault on Kyalara's primary orbital station, aiming to seize control of defensive systems and turn the humans' resources against them. Yet humans anticipated the move, countering before it could begin. Dropships intercepted boarding pods, elite squads neutralized elite invaders mid-deployment, and orbital defenses targeted pods with precision so perfect it seemed preordained. Rourke led boarding teams through debris fields and damaged corridors, dismantling enemy leadership and reclaiming critical nodes, while Lyra suppressed enemy reinforcements with calculated arcs of energy, and Jox exploited environmental controls to force attackers into predictable paths that ensured total neutralization. The enemy, despite superior numbers and advanced equipment, found themselves consistently outmatched by humans' adaptability, instinct, and ability to improvise under pressure. The princess watched, awestruck, as humans not only defended, but dominated the battlefield, demonstrating why the galaxy feared Earth's warriors. They answered where others would flee, endured where others would perish, and overcame the impossible where others would fail. Hours of relentless combat continued, and humans did not falter. Rourke moved across multiple fronts, coordinating attacks, neutralizing threats, and shielding civilians, all while maintaining awareness of every tactical variable. Lyra's teams created lethal corridors through enemy formations, suppressing advanced weaponry and protecting allied forces, while Jox manipulated cybernetic networks and planetary systems to exploit vulnerabilities and force enemy units into self-defeating maneuvers. The princess began to see clearly that humans were not just soldiers, they were apex predators, species whose instinct for survival had been honed into art over millennia. Our presence dictated the terms of battle, our adaptability rendered predictions futile, and our relentless drive ensured that wherever humans answered a call, survival was absolute and victory was inevitable. she realized that the myths she had feared were real. Humans were terrifying, unstoppable, and lethal not because of brute force alone but because of a combination of intelligence, instinct, and creativity that no other species could match. The climactic engagement came when the enemy flagship attempted a direct strike on Kylara's planetary core, an act intended to annihilate both infrastructure and population. Humans responded with synchronized precision that no alien fleet could anticipate. Rourke coordinated orbital strikes on critical nodes, deploying elite squads to neutralize access points while simultaneously directing ground teams to secure evacuation corridors and protect remaining civilians. Lyra's suppression fire eliminated critical targeting arrays and high-value weapons installations, while Jox hacked into energy conduits and communication networks, turning enemy systems against themselves. Every attack the enemy launched was met with anticipation and countered with lethal improvisation. The flagship, despite overwhelming technological advantage, found itself neutralized, crippled by a species that moved as one organism, adaptive, relentless, and unstoppable. The princess, her luminescent patterns flickering in disbelief, finally understood fully. Humans were apex survivors, capable of turning annihilation into triumph, and that capacity for survival made them not merely warriors but legends realized in flesh and blood. By the time the final shots were fired, Kylara was secure. The enemy fleet had retreated or been neutralized, infrastructure stabilized, and civilians evacuated safely. Humans continued to coordinate planetary recovery, improvising solutions to sustain life and defend against potential counterattacks. Rourke, Lyra, and Jox, though exhausted, moved with the calm efficiency that defined their species, demonstrating that endurance and lethal adaptability were inseparable for humans. The princess, finally able to relax, turned to me and whispered, awe and respect mingling in her voice. I feared humans, I feared your violence, and yet, you save more than you destroy. I nodded. We endure, we answer the call. We fight when others flee. That is why we survive. That is why the galaxy fears humans. That is why life persists when we are involved. Her wings quivered as comprehension dawned. Her fear transformed into admiration, and she realized the terrifying, inspiring truth. Humans were unstoppable, not because of weaponry alone, but because survival, adaptation, and relentless determination were woven into the very fabric of our being. As the Valor's Edge lifted from Kylara's orbit, carrying humans back to positions where the galaxy's next crisis awaited, the princess watched the fleet disappear into hyperspace, and she understood what few other species ever would. Humans were more than warriors, more than survivors, more than legends whispered across the stars. We were apex predators of circumstance, unmatched in adaptability, instinct, and lethal efficiency, answering calls for help where all others would hesitate, enduring trials that would crush entire civilizations, and ensuring that wherever humans appeared, life, survival, and victory were guaranteed. The galaxy would remember Kylara, not for diplomacy or negotiation, but for the arrival of humans, unstoppable, unpredictable, and unforgettable. And the princess, forever changed by witnessing their arrival and triumph firsthand, knew with certainty that Earth's warriors were not negotiators, not diplomats, but the ultimate force for survival the universe had ever seen, and the legends had only just begun.